The major international news right now is the decision by a U.S. grand jury to indict 13 Russian individuals and 3 Russian companies for supposedly interfering in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Now, of course, the indictments don't actually say interfering in the election because that's not actually a charge you can get. Basically, what they say is that instances of fraud occurred, supposed banking fraud, etc. But what they allege, they also basically admit had nothing to do with altering the outcome of the election. So it makes you, so when you look at the media, like they're acting like, oh, the smoking gun has been found. Now it's proven that Russia stole the election for Donald Trump, etc. When you couldn't be any further from the truth. That's not what this says at all. You can read the indictment for yourself. I'll put a link in the description. There's nothing in there that actually altered the outcome of the election. Now, we've already heard from social media sites, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, that these so-called Russian bots basically didn't really amount to anything at all. Now, particularly with regards to YouTube, they counted a number of supposedly Russian channels, bot channels, and of them, the average amount of views that each one of them had with the videos that were supposedly supporting Donald Trump and when they were really just anti-Hillary was about 300 views each. So in other words, it wasn't anything significant whatsoever. And even Twitter itself acknowledged that the amount of tweets that were supposedly Russian interference was like less than, what was it, less than 1% of the overall tweets that took place on a political level. Like not overall all tweets, but like less than 1% of political tweets, tweets that were related to the actual election themselves. In other words, this big supposed smoking gun is non-existent. But you wouldn't get that sense from you listening to the mainstream media. They're all immediately claiming to you that the big smoking gun, the proof that Russia stole the election, has now been made. When really, that could be nothing further from the truth. But here's something that I find really interesting. Aside from the fact that there very blatantly is no evidence whatsoever that Russia stole the election, the former CIA head, James Woolsey, went on air and actually joked about the U.S. interfering in other people's elections.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though? We don't mess around other people's elections,
only for a very good cause.
Can you do that? Do a Vine video and...
Haha, very funny, yeah, for their own good. So let me get this straight. A few Russians run ads that they don't like Hillary Clinton. That's meddling in the election. Yet the U.S. literally steals elections for puppet candidates that they put up. And they do it through organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy. An organization that's literally their whole job is to undermine the democracies of countries which receive millions of dollars from the United States government specifically for that purpose. But, you know, that's okay. But if Russia runs some ads saying we don't like Hillary Clinton, oh, well, that's like the crime of the absolute century. I mean, the hypocrisy by the United States is utterly astounding. It's a complete mountain out of a molehill, and it is an actual mountain of hypocrisy. It's unbelievable when we really look at that. And there's some real issues concerning the 2016 election that went completely unchecked. Like the whole fact that Bernie Sanders was screwed out of the nomination. Debbie Wasserman Schultz went into court and said they were not obligated to put the person up as the head of the party that people actually voted for. She said that in court on record. Supposedly, the servers for the Democratic National Convention were hacked, except for the part where the data transfer rate shows that it was going too fast to have been done through an internet line. It would have had to have been copied by a flash drive from somebody inside the office, which is, a lot different than saying Russia on the other side of the world hacked it through the internet. And the fact that they refused to turn over the servers to the FBI for investigation, which they claimed were hacked. So maybe we're starting to really understand now that maybe this whole narrative of how Russia supposedly stole the election for Donald Trump is kind of not true. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how people who constantly scream how America is a racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic place, which it is, but then turn around and claim that a person who represents those values couldn't have possibly become the president. Like, nobody would vote for that. I mean, that's what America is, but nobody would vote for that. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. There are sections of the ruling class, I mean, not just like regular work people, but sections of the ruling class that cannot stand the fact that he actually won. And I mean, there's always a struggle between the various interests, various groups of interests within the ruling class. And some of them are very much dead set against getting rid of him. I mean, to me, whether or not he gets kicked out, I couldn't care. I mean, no matter who you vote for as president for one of the two parties, it's not a democracy anyway, so what does it really matter? It is, however, something that I'm concerned about when there's false allegations of hacking and interfering in the elections, which are used to push aggressions against another country, particularly one that is helping Syria defend itself from the United States and United States puppets. I mean, this is just a justification used for placing greater pressure and justifying sanctions against Russia for daring to stand up to U.S. power. But we're supposed to believe Russia, the greatest evil, when we're going through the whole second Cold War thing, which, by the way, totally not as good as the first one. The sequel's never as good as the original. So, I mean, there it is. That's what the mainstream media doesn't really want to tell you, is the fact that there's really nothing to these indictments. At best, they're allegations of fraud. Nothing actually pertaining to the electoral system, just stuff about ads during the election. Because you wouldn't want to be able to pay for a political ad, right? I mean, it's bad if Russia does that. But of course, the U.S. stealing the election for Boris Yeltsin, and that's actually well documented as something that massively screwed over Russia and caused the deaths of quite a few people. Well, I guess that's perfectly okay. And don't forget that it's okay to joke about doing it.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.